Hello, and thank you so much for joining us. We're here at Automation Fair live on the show floor, and I'm super excited because for the first time ever, we're going to be live streaming a series of podcasts right here from the Rock Studios booth. And if you haven't already checked it out, we've been doing an executive podcast series called The State of the Industry, Your Guide to Smart Manufacturing. And our host, Dave Vasko, who you see in a minute, he's the Director of Advanced Technology at Rockwell Automation. And he brings together different experts from around the industry to talk about what's impacting manufacturers and industrial operations in this era of digital transformation and industrial IoT. They talk about the impacts of cutting-edge technology, workforce and talent issues, as well as the changing global business trends. So, if you're looking forward to stay ahead of the industrial automation market in this era of digital, this is the podcast series for you. Now, today, Dave's brought together different experts across the automation and the information area to really give you a sense of what's happening right now. Our first guest up is Rod Totem. He's a manager of software and controller products at Fanuc Americas, and the two of them are going to be talking about collaborative robotics and what's happening with the dynamics of the impact of bringing humans and machines together to really solve business problems and improve manufacturing and industrial operations. So, excited to hear what they have to say. Catch you later.
Well, thank you. This is Dave Vasko, your host of State of the Industry, your guide to smart manufacturing. We're joined here by Rob Totten of Fanuc. Rob, welcome.
Welcome, nice to be here.
Thank you. So, Rob, we've seen so many developments in robotics. When we first started working, robots were guarded by hard guards or light curtains that really kept them from the operators or people in that environment. Today we're seeing collaborative robots where people are working close with robots. Why is this change, and can you explain some of the things about these?
Well, a lot of the change has to do with technology. You know, in the past, you know, robots were inherently, dangerous, and you had to separate yourself, from the hazard. With the advent of some of the more recent technologies, in our case at Fanuc Robotics with DCS or dual check safety, software rated or safety rated software, allows us to do certain things that in the past was just not possible. In the past we had an emergency stop and maybe a gate switch when the gate is open. Now we have the ability to actually have, zone monitoring, both joint Cartesian speed monitoring, as well as the advent of external devices such as area scanners, light curtains and so forth that just have opened up and enabled, robots to be used in applications and in ways that previously wasn't possible.
So you mentioned they're used in different ways. So I assume that's allowed a lot more agility. Can you give us some examples of how you're able to apply robots today where it wasn't possible in the past?
Well, if we look, there's roughly 4 different types of collaborative operation. One would be, safety rated monitored stop. That would be a situation where the robot moves into a position, stops, the safety software within the robot basically maintains and guarantees that the software or that the robot is not moving, and then the operator is permitted basically to go load the tool directly, and then when the operator steps out, the robot is able to continue. That's one method. The other, is with hand guiding, using either a traditional yellow robot in Fanuc's case, or a green collaborative robot with hand guiding in a manner of similar to a lift assist device, where the operator's in full control. What we're seeing is kind of one of the larger areas that's coming out is what we call speed and separation limited, or otherwise known as fenceless, in the industry, where either a traditional yellow robot or even a collaborative robot is put in without those traditional fences, without the traditional hard gating and so forth, that allows for easier interaction and operation between the robot and the operator, whether it's to load parts or whatnot. And in those cases, when the operator is far enough removed, the robot can move basically at full program speed, and then using present sensing devices, whether it be an area scanner, light screen, or some other device, as the operator or person gets closer, the robot will slow down, and then as he or she continues to approach, the robot will either stop in the case of, say, a traditional robot, or in the case of a what we call collaborative or CR series robot from Fanuc, the robot will switch into a collaborative mode where it's basically power and force limited, allowing it to continue to work with the operator and so forth.
So in the past, it's been a robot or it's been a person,
Yeah.
and now with this collaborative robots or the collaborative modes where you have the guarding or guardless, hard guardless robots, you're able to have people and the robots work together. From a customer standpoint, what's the major difference you say? What's the advantage of having robots of this nature?
A lot of it has to do with the perception or ease of deployment, ease of integration, and so forth. In many cases, robot applications in the past, when they had to be guarded and had to be fully processed to be basically fully autonomous or fully automatic, moving towards some of the collaborative capability now, we can actually use collaborative robot, the term cobot, is used frequently and so forth, where the actual, in the case of a CR series or a collaborative robot, you can actually have that robot handle and move, maybe move the large part, within the envelope of the operator, and then have the operator just do the fine assembly or the stuff that's more tactile feedback that's just easier for them. So it, can help improve ergonomics, throughput, it just makes it easier, if you will, to do certain tasks.
Yeah, I definitely can see the ergonomic nature, being able to use the robot to lift heavy parts, which would be damaging to people and cause wear on people themselves. How about the agility? Do you see collaborative robots allowing manufacturers to do product changes faster, to be able to change the process of the products themselves?
Obviously, the use of robots and so forth, does allow for some offline, simulation, some digital twinning, and so forth, allowing for for changeover, to potentially be all that much easier, and so forth. I haven't seen too much of that, to date. Most likely just due to the fact, collaborative robots, at least from Fanuc's end, have been out for about 4 years now. So we haven't necessarily reached that, changeover cycle again. But what we do see is we see that we have a tremendous number of customers coming, with the direction that, hey, I need to install a robot, I need to do a collaborative application, and in many cases the situation is they've got hard dedicated tooling, that would be very cost prohibitive or expensive for them to completely rip out to put in a traditional robotic work cell, but having the ability to, with the appropriate risk assessment, with the appropriate, care and planning and setup, they can deploy a traditional collaborative robot, one of our green CR series robots, with some relative ease without having to, go through and, install a significant amount of fencing, without having to go through and completely redesign, the system. It's just a matter of, putting the robot in, with the appropriate tooling, after having done the appropriate risk assessment, and turning that on. So that seems to be kind of where we're seeing a lot of interest.
Yeah, that makes sense. So really, the retrofit applications, existing applications, are a prime example of how you could apply collaborative robotics. Now, looking at the entire field, we have traditional robots, we have collaborative robots. We hear a lot about collaborative robots. Where are most of the robots today? Are they still the traditional robots? And how do things going in the future?
Today the traditional, in our case, yellow robot is still the industry dominant, the primary robot that we sell. What we find is a lot of customers who come to us looking for to do collaborative, that's kind of the mantra. It's kind of like IoT 4.0. Everybody's kind of getting the direction or gotten the direction from upper management or whatnot to go look at collaborative robots. And when we sit down and we review with them exactly what the application is or what they truly need, in many cases what we wind up with as a solution is what we call fenceless or a speed and separation limited application using a traditional robot, where the operator is still able to go in, the robot's going to safely stop, the operator can load parts, can do what he or she needs to, and then when they leave, the robot can continue operation. And so forth. There's not the actual need in many cases for the robot to actually continue to move when in the presence, of an operator. So everybody comes in thinking I got to do, in many cases I've got to do cobots, but at the end of the day, it's still a collaborative application. It's just not a power and force limited, application that they may wind up with.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And the fenceless application seems like the best of both worlds. I know from the experience in the factory that a lot of the accidental trips are somebody going past a guarding, and with a fenceless robot, you have the ability to actually bring it to a stopping point, yes, or a slowdown point where it's not going to create a danger for that operator, but still taking advantage of the high-speed operation the robot would have. Well, is there anything else, Rob? Is there anything else you'd like us to know about collaborative robots?
No, the applications, continue to grow. With new presence sensing technologies, with machine learning and so forth, and enhanced vision systems. The market for robots, and in particular collaborative robots as well, is continuing to grow. So I look forward to many more years, selling many robots and experiencing new markets and new industries.
Rob, thank you very much. Thank you for being our guest on the State of the Industry podcast, your guide to smart manufacturing. I'm going to turn it back over to Beth.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave and Rob. That was fantastic. I absolutely love hearing how this technology keeps evolving. We've actually had collaborative robots at Automation for the last several years with our partnership with Fanuc. In fact, about 2 years ago, we had one of their large collaborative robots in our innovation booth, and I got to, yes, hug a robot. Pretty cool, lots of fun to actually put technology in action. And speaking of that, if you're just joining us right now and missed the podcast of Rob Totten from Fanuc and Dave Vasko from Rockwell Automation, you won't miss it. You can catch it on iTunes, but also we're going to run a video from Fanuc that will show these collaborative robots in action. We're really excited to see it. Keep joining us. We've got another podcast up at this, but thanks, Rob and Dave, for that intro. Let's see the video.
This mobile collaborative robotic work cell was developed to demonstrate how Fanuc remains at the forefront of innovation in collaborative robot applications, utilizing an automatic guided vehicle, or AGV, to move Fanuc's new CR7IAL long-arm collaborative robot between two assembly stations. At the first assembly station, the Fanuc CR7IAL scans fiducial screws located at the corners of the assembly table to verify its position. Next, it uses Fanuc IR Vision to read a 2D barcode and IDs the table it's working on. The robot then grips and plugs its power source into a 120 VAC receptacle to charge its uninterruptible power supply, or UPS. All Fanuc collaborative robots can be readily equipped with Fanuc IR Vision and force sensing. The robot starts the gear assembly process by first picking and placing the ring gear into the assembly. It then follows with picking and placing each spur gear into the assembly. The CR7IAL robot uses mounted vision to inspect the picking and placing locations for accuracy and part present during the entire assembly process. Once the assembly process is complete, the robot unplugs and calls for the AGV to move it to the next station. The AGV lifts the robot and moves it to the second assembly station, where the robot is tasked with inserting relays onto a printed circuit board, or PCB. A stack light located on the robot's platform turns yellow when the robot is in transportation It turns green once contact stop is armed on the robot, and the red light only appears during robot fault. Once again, the robot scans the fiducial screws to locate the table, reads the 2D barcode to identify the table, then grips and plugs its power source into a 120 VAC receptacle to charge its UPS. The robot starts the PCB assembly process by picking up a relay from the relay tray. The robot presents the pins of the relay for inspection and, upon passing inspection, inserts the relay onto the PCB. The CR7IAL robot repeats this process until all 4 relays are inserted. The robot will then disassemble and reassemble each part in succession, displaying continuous operation for these assembly applications. Collaborative robots from Fanuc feature the full functionality of traditional yellow Fanuc robots, including IR vision and force sensing, full networking connectivity, easy interaction with other factory equipment, offline programming with Fanuc RoboGuide, and quick programming. Fanuc is ready to address your most challenging collaborative applications. To learn more, please visit fanucamerica.com.
Hey, we really hope you enjoyed that video. I love seeing the collaborative robots in action. It's really amazing what you can do. Look forward to seeing more. We're actually back here at the Rock Studio for another podcast from the State of the Industries, your guide to the future of smart manufacturing with Dave Vasko. And his next guest up is Neil Meldrum. Neil is from Microsoft, and he is in charge of business strategy in their manufacturing industry group. Dave and Neil will actually be going into detail looking at what's happening with mixed reality and how we're using it to upskill first-line workers, as well as artificial intelligence and cognitive services, to see how can these technologies really help improve the health and safety of our workers. So I'm really excited to hear about this topic. I hope you are too. Off to you, Dave.
Yeah, thank you. This is Dave Vasko, your host of State of the Industry, your guide to smart manufacturing. We're joined by Neil Meldrum from Microsoft. We're going to be talking about mixed reality and some of the technologies that are really going to be impacting the factory. Welcome, Neil.
Thanks, Dave.
Before we get started, boy, I was checking out your page and I saw something remarkable. You built a GT40.
I did. I have a passion for the automobile, and building one was one of the biggest challenges for me, but I think the innovation that went on during that time of racing and how it's translated into vehicle engineering is second to none. And some of the innovation now with EV, especially testing performance envelopes we've never seen before, it's just a fascinating time for automobiles. I
think that's fascinating. I think it has to be one of the best cars ever made. I was at a national tour event. I had a chance to meet Carroll Smith before he passed away, and he actually told me about the famous meeting they had with Henry Ford Jr. where they went in to ask the requirements, and Henry Ford Jr. told them to beat Ferrari, and they walked out and they weren't sure about the budget. So they walked back in and they said, "What's the budget?" And Henry Ford Jr. said, "I told you, beat Ferrari."
And they did it.
There was no budget. They did. What a remarkable car. So that innovation really transfers to a lot of things you do in your job, and things like mixed reality, which we just love. So we love looking at these technologies and how they're going to impact us in the future. So looking at virtual reality and how you actually are able to take your entire environment and have it appear in front of you being virtual, or augmented reality where you have a real environment and then it's augmented by objects, and finally mixed reality, which we see with the HoloLens, where your computers understand, the headset understands the environment around you, and it can augment that environment with real physics, and that is just amazing.
It's an amazing technology, and we really see 4 core areas of impact. I mean, prolifically in design, it's fascinating to have a designer, an engineer, and a designer interact in an augmented or mixed reality mode. If you look at automotive consumer experience, another great example where I want to understand what a service is for my car, and we can bring the customer in and augment that and guide them through a process. Then secondarily, in the context of manufacturing, we can actually provide a guided work process and validate that process using artificial intelligence. So it's really about upskilling those first-line workers. We have an aging workforce, we have a millennial workforce. How do we bring convergence, technology adoption, and really drive that innovation and upskill those workers? I think also another interesting use case is training. Without physical assets in place, you were talking about robotics, fascinating area. How can I interact with a robotic? Can I actually program a robot without being a domain expert? So real innovation in that stream. And then finally, you've seen some of the work we've done with remote assist, having a subject matter expert local in a service center, and then placing a technician in the field with the appliance, with the goggle, and then bringing contextual information to help them through that process. So it's really a disruptive technology. I think next to AI probably has the highest impact within manufacturing today.
I would definitely agree. I think it is very disruptive, and it really helps with a lot of the gaps we're seeing. So you talk about the gaps in the workforce we're seeing. We're seeing people that are experienced that are leaving the workforce. We're seeing people coming in, and we're seeing the technologies change so much. We need new skills there. Augmented reality really has the ability to do that. From the training, from the upskilling of the worker, from remote assist, I think those are great examples. I know we're using the HoloLens headsets itself for doing some remote certifications. We send a headset out, a technician's able to put it on, and with somebody in their ear, they're able to walk through a complex procedure and actually verify something's done correctly.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time too. I mean, partners like PTC are accelerating content development, so building platforms to actually help us leverage and build content more quickly. And I think that's where the innovation stream really comes. People begin to think about how are different ways I can use this and leverage this to my business. And again, augmenting that workforce I think is a key component. It's fascinating to see some of the scenarios that are lighting up today, and it's really business innovation. People are looking beyond traditional process and driving new process through the use of MR.
And I think that's the key. It's not sticking with their conventional process, looking at how the process can change to really leverage these technologies, and that's really where you see the big advantages.
Agree. You know, we talk about how technologies outpace business process, and it's an interesting dynamic when you think about it. While we can leverage digital technologies to replicate a process, the real innovation comes when we differentiate and rethink our processes.
I couldn't agree more. That's right on target. So we love the HoloLens headset. We've been using it really since it was first introduced. We have it in our research labs. We've been applying it. What's next? Can you tell us a little bit about where you see the technology going?
I think there's some very interesting use cases. Recently, Microsoft introduced a use case where we can actually vector a space and then bring that into a CAD model. And beyond that, design out assets. So a great partner of ours is ThyssenKrupp. They make mobility staircases for residential environments. And they've actually used HoloLens to do just that. Go into a local environment, vector map that, bring back the asset, and build out a CAD model and deploy the staircase. They have over a 95% success rate in deployment now. So if you think about a constrained space, building something custom and then deploying it in that space, fascinating to see how the impact of technology like MR is impacted.
I love that example because I mean, one of the problems we've seen is if you have even if you have complex CAD models, usually the richness, the granularity is just so detailed, it takes a lot of work to take those and simplify those where they've been rendered in augmented reality. Being able to actually vector map those out and bring them in seems like a huge improvement to the process flow.
Truly is. I think one of the other interesting areas of innovation is leveraging AI technology as well. If we look at things like the Office Graph, where you're interacting with your productivity tools, they're auto-correcting. In PowerPoint, you bring in an image and it says, this is an automobile with a person next to it, a man or a woman next to it. Now we can bring contextual information to people where they're standing with the goggle appliance on and build out these assets. And now forthcoming things like cognitive search, where you can actually interact with documentation at a cognitive level, either through voice, natural language recognition, or through input. We can pose a question, and that information will come back to you in that virtual environment.
Well, it seems like a natural to leverage cognitive search and AI with augmented reality to really build those environments out to make them more powerful.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting also, you look at, for instance, the work that Rockwell's done with Shelby and the chatbot framework. How do we drive higher levels of collaboration? Not only in the context of imaging, I mean, we have cross-platform experiences where we're leveraging things like tablets or workstations, but also infusing AI into those experiences to draw down and build a bigger collaboration across the shop floor.
That makes sense. So you mentioned the remote assistance, but really, if people all had these headsets on, if we're all collaborating, it could be really virtually there, working on teams, working on particular problems.
It's true. It's true. It's not unusual to see, for instance, companies like ZF who have designs that are done in Germany, yet their plant in Greycourt have technicians that are deploying the equipment, and collaboratively they're working over the headsets to actually build out these assets, these work cells.
Yeah, that makes sense. We've seen people actually using these technologies to help support maybe reshoring things or moving things to different locations, and having their experts that are at a different location be able to support that.
That's right. I mean, one of the core tenets around Factory of the Future is this idea of, think of lot size of one. How do I make agile production and reiterate my equipment, refactor my equipment to accommodate different manufacturing scenarios? And I think space planning and leveraging CAD tools to draw down and infrastructure planning is a core component of that.
Okay, that really is a great application for it. So with the HoloLens technology, we've seen where it is today. I think it's just remarkable what it's able to do. Are we going to see a new version of that soon?
So our next generation is in work, and we're actually drawing from manufacturing customers for feedback in preview to draw down and design iteration. I think some of the core areas are a larger peripheral viewing space. I think that'll have higher impact, and also consideration in areas that are, for instance, safety, have safety requirements, explosive safe, or other domains.
Okay, so how much bigger do you think you'll be able to get the peripheral vision?
About 30% now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's 30% now. How much bigger do you think you'll be able to make it?
We're probably about 40, 45, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things about mixed reality versus virtual reality is a worker becomes less disoriented. They can wear the appliance longer, and some of the neural effects that occur with a VR constraint are not part of this mixed reality interaction.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely see that. I mean, VR obviously is further ahead as far as the technology, and it's much easier to do because you're taking over the entire field of view. Mixed reality, augmented reality, you're really trying to keep that image stable while the person's head's moving in the environment. It's much more difficult to do. But in a factory environment, having the ability to see what's there is crucial. You couldn't put somebody out in a factory with a virtual reality headset on. It has to be that augmented reality or mixed reality approach to make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love the mixed reality where it understands the environment, and now it can start to augment that, give instructions, give indications, provide training, maybe just-in-time training when somebody's trying to repair something right in the field there.
It's amazing to see some of the content generation that's forthcoming. There's a great demonstrated example of leveraging image and video to actually build out content, having a technician go through a process, and then underlying platform generating that content, and then bringing somebody who's never seen this asset before, actually performing the service. It really shows you how you can leverage this technology very quickly to train people.
So you're actually using the headset itself to generate content for the expert generates the content for the person that's trained or using it as an aid.
That's correct, yeah. It's an interesting time, yeah.
It is.
I think that's where the real innovation will come is if you look at content generation as being, right now it's in early stages, but we're finding acceleration in those platforms. It'll make it more ubiquitous across the domain.
You know, I think that's the key because the content generation has been the hardest part of this, to actually build out the content, to get the models. And if these tools themselves can help with that process, that would make the adoption all that much easier.
Absolutely, absolutely. Interesting times for sure.
It definitely is, it definitely is. So are there other applications where you see artificial intelligence helping mixed reality really provide value?
You know, AR is a fascinating topic. AI into itself is a fascinating topic, but I think in terms of augmenting, if you look at how Microsoft is approaching AI, we're really trying to make it ubiquitous. And you look at our cognitive services suite of technologies, things like natural language recognition, reading comprehension. the idea of image recognition, now going beyond just recognizing a frame, but recognizing countenance or aperture. There's a notion of ambient intelligence. I know what's in the space. I'm a person, this is a camera. So these are all accelerating very, very quickly, and the convergence of these technologies, I think, are really going to differentiate the way that we interact, the way that information is brought into context to us. And if you think about even something as simple as natural language interaction, the number of languages that have full comprehension, I believe, is over 57. So I can interact with you in a completely different language, have full comprehension of that language, and it really breaks the boundaries of communication.
You know, from collaboration, that would be so helpful. That you have somebody in a different location, maybe speaking a different language, you're able to speak your natural language, have it converted, and be able to collaborate.
Yeah.
That seems like a great way to really spur this collaboration, this global interconnection.
There's an interesting trend as well. I mean, we as a manufacturer, you don't think of us as a manufacturer, 44,000 SKUs in our portfolio, but we actually leverage chatbot framework to collect information that was traditionally done on a clipboard through mobile devices and ingested it into our data lake strategy. So new insights being derived from the shop floor through the use of these interactive, collaborative types of technologies.
That makes sense. And then you mentioned the AI. So we've used the mixed reality, and we've had an expert come in and help serve up things, or maybe somebody will request something and have it out. When you're talking about the AI, you're actually able to understand the environment they're in, what they're looking at, maybe the product, maybe the problem, and start to serve up information for them using AI to really augment that experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we've seen demonstrated examples of, for instance, image recognition. Probably top of mind today in terms of quality initiatives.
Yeah.
And how can I augment, for instance, somebody welding something? Can I validate the quality of that weld? Can I provide them feedback of that weld? So things of that nature. Image recognition is maturing so quickly beyond just a frame, beyond assets in the image, and it's being leveraged in a variety of different ways, but I think leveraging and building on the MR practice to augment that in any type of workflow is really going to change the way that we look at production.
Yeah, that makes sense. Be able, and you think about it, having that record, having that maybe a video record of what's there, using the AI to actually make a qualitative judgment of what's being done, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, yeah. It's a fascinating, AI for me is, we have an interesting strategy also on leveraging AI on the edge, training models in the cloud, bringing them on-premise and reducing latency, or maybe there are IP issues that we want to address by having the model on-premise. It's a differentiated strategy for us, and I think overall it really plays well into the overall MR strategy, AI strategy.
I think it does. Neil, thank you for joining us. This is Dave Vasko, your host of State of the Industry, your guide to smart manufacturing. I'm turning it back over to Beth.
Thanks, Neil and Dave. That is awesome to hear where we are at with mixed reality, artificial intelligence, and cognitive services. It's actually really near and dear to my heart as we've been working on bringing the connected to enterprise to life for our customers for the last over 5 years, and really closely teaming with Microsoft of how in the early days we could be showing on the show floor people using mixed reality technology and seeing artificial intelligence in action. So it's great to hear where we're at in driving more use cases to bring value to the operations, especially around workforce as well as health and safety issues that we've got going on, always in the industrial market. So if you're just tuning in now, we just featured our second podcast in a series of 3 live at Automation Fair in the Rock Studios booth, hosted by Dave Vasko. It's called The State of the Industry, your guide to smart manufacturing. And whether you heard the podcast on mixed reality, artificial intelligence, and cognitive services from Dave and Neil Meldrum from Microsoft, or if you're just tuning in, check out this video to see more in action.
No matter where you work or what you do, collaboration is the key to success. When challenges arise, you need the right people with the right expertise. But bringing people together isn't always easy, and travel is not always an option. With Microsoft Remote Assist, help is always a moment away. With a window into your world, backed by enterprise-level security, your team can collaborate with shared perspective, anytime, anywhere.
Bonjour, Amy. How can I help you? We're having some issues with our machine in C5. I could really use your help again.
We just updated the manual for these.
Great.
This looks like an electrical issue.
I've never seen that before. Have you?
I think the Osaka plant had the same problem. Haruto's an expert on this.
Oh yeah. Let's bring him into the call.
Hey there.
Hey, Haruto.
What's going on?
Well, we're having some issues here. Do you think it's this component?
Our issue was the charging relay.
Okay. I'll try that.
Can you try this?
Okay. That's a problem right there.
Even though you might be a world apart, you can solve problems together.
That worked.
Used to be good to go now.
Great. Thanks for the help, you two.
See ya.
By bringing digital content and mixed reality annotations into your world, and connecting people across devices, you can get the help you need to solve difficult problems faster.
That was great. I hope you enjoyed that video from Microsoft on mixed reality, artificial intelligence, and cognitive services. If you're just joining us right now, we're on our third podcast of the live streaming podcast at Automation Fair right now, featuring our State of the Industry, Your Guide to Smart Manufacturing podcast, hosted by Dave Vasko. Next up, we've got Barry Delices from Stratus. He's the Director of Product Management and Marketing for Stratus, and he's going to talk more about his experience around edge computing, not just edge computing, but the bleeding edge computing. And what's exciting is that Barry's actually got over 20 years of experience really driving innovation around infrastructure, around cybersecurity. He's been at Stratus for about 2 years, 2016, and before that, he was actually driving cybersecurity activity at RSA, a really top-notch company also on cybersecurity. So I'm excited to hear what Barry and Dave talk about right now on cybersecurity and how the whole edge computing is playing into this era of scalable compute. Thanks, guys. Look forward to hearing you afterwards.
Thank you, Beth. This is Dave Vasko, your host of State of the Industry, your guide to smart manufacturing. Today we're talking with Barry Delices from Stratus. We're going to be talking about the bleeding edge of the edge. Barry, welcome.
Thank you, Dave. Nice to be here.
Thank you. Now, when we talk about edge computing, I'm constantly confused. It seems like the edge moves from down to the sensor to maybe the edge of the factory. Where do you define the edge?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's definitely many definitions out there, so trying to rationalize them all is a challenge. So we see edge computing becoming a more important factor for manufacturers and industry, driven by a lot of the IoT and artificial intelligence use cases. And really what that's doing is bringing computing down to where the data is originating, the source of the data, if you will. And what's happening is, why edge computing is important is it's really connecting the people and the things to the data centers, to the cloud. So it's not, sometimes people think of edge computing as trying to eliminate the cloud, but really it's trying to bring the cloud down to the actual plant floor, or in some of the bleeding edge use cases out to expansive sites and places where there aren't any people or data centers or IT skills at all.
You know, that makes sense. So I know that it's difficult to push everything in the cloud. Yeah. Communication really, it's expensive. To actually move data around, it costs money to do that, to put that infrastructure in place. It also opens up security. The more things you push outside the factory walls, the more things you need to keep track of. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense to actually do the processing where you need it, where the people are, and to have that quick interaction. What are some good applications, some applications you've seen where this really has made a difference?
Yeah, that's a great point. So certainly it's all about the data in this new digitalization world and this connected world that we live in today. And what we've seen is people are trying to go after some of the more machine learning, artificial intelligence type of use cases, and bringing those applications to bolt on their existing infrastructure. And when we think about those use cases, what really the challenge is trying to collect that data, make sense of that data, and ultimately provide some valuable insight to either the machine or an operator in real time. And that's where I think some of the challenge you're talking about in terms of network bandwidth costs, storage costs, even security and privacy come into play. And so being able to make that decision in real time and allow those data-driven, informed decisions to be made is really a key factor in a lot of these use cases.
And that makes sense. Even in just from an availability standpoint, if the decision can be made locally and with the operator of the machine, it can be taken, even if the network were to be down or there's some disturbance that wouldn't allow you to get to the cloud. So you're able to take that action repeatably, high availability, high reliability.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at Stratus, we've been around for 38 years, and we certainly understand the importance of availability. One of the things that we've also seen is that in this evolving world, there are fewer and fewer people that have IT skills, because you still have machines, you still have equipment down there that needs to be managed, needs to be serviced, needs to be maintained. And being able to do that in these remote locations where you don't have the benefit of a data center or an infrastructure team, or as I said, in some cases, people at all, the simplicity of the machinery, right? How built in, how turnkey is it? How easy is it for not just IT people, but OT people to manage these systems becomes a priority in these environments.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, so we've seen the challenges of the workforce as people that are experienced are retiring. We're seeing that productivity is being enhanced, more productivity requirements, but we're not seeing we really have enough people to do that. What sort of things do you do to make it easier to manage those devices in those environments?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So our vision for edge computing and really what drives in us is really broken into 3 different areas, right? So we believe that edge computing needs to be simple, needs to be protected, and needs to be autonomous. So simplicity to us is defined, how easy is it to install the solution, manage it, deploy it. Our latest product, we actually were able to make a claim that it can be installed in under 30 minutes. It's so easy, in fact, that we tested it with a bunch of first graders, and we had first graders come in who deployed it in 25 minutes. So that helped validate the simplicity. But it's also not about just the simplicity of installing it. It's also about maintaining it and managing it. We really strive to bring a lot of IT infrastructure, IT capabilities, and make them embedded into the system itself, and make it so that they're more part of the solution versus another package you have to install, learn, deploy, manage. So for us, we've been known as a fault-tolerant company, but we're really working towards redefine what protection means. And protection is not just about, in our world, not just about the availability of the system, but also the performance of the applications. It's also about the security and the privacy of the data and the applications, and who's accessing information and how it's going to and from the device. So protection really becomes important. And finally, if we think about the future, as I said, the people side, the skill side, you mentioned that. There's going to be fewer and fewer people with these machines, and really the goal we have is how do we make them truly autonomous so that they can be doing things automatically, so you don't have to. And that first step is one of the things that we've been doing for many years is around remote monitoring, diagnostics. But we're currently working on trying to bring some of the provisioning, some of the management aspects, the administration aspects, built into not just the system, but also being able to do that remotely, so that either an end customer could do it, or a partner like Rockwell, or even we could do it, and allow those systems to truly run without any end user interaction.
That makes sense. I mean, really providing those services. We see even devices being deployed today where the devices themselves are deployed as a service.
Exactly.
And you're actually providing that service, keeping them up and running, and we may see more changes like that in the future. You talked about security, and let's talk about that in a minute. I mean, it's such a big topic. We're all struggling with that. People have gone to even trying air gapping systems, which really, in today's world, is impossible. Yeah. There's always a way to get in.
Sure.
So what are you doing to make it easier for people to manage their security in the factory, in these environments where you have multiple user, you have authentication, you have zones that are appearing there?
Yep. So I think a lot of security starts first with, one of the benefits of edge computing is that you're allowed to now process the data remotely, and actually where the data is being originated. And what that allows you to do is to actually keep the sensitive data where it's being created and not have to send it outside. So there's a bit of security and privacy because now you can transmit only what's being anonymized and remove some of that risk. But as you said, that alone is not going to protect people. And so some of the things that we're looking at is bringing some of those security features into the device, bringing things like trusted platform modules, bringing secure boots, bringing more security skills, but making it part of the solution itself, and allowing the operator to then create those configurations in the system itself and have the system manage it for them. So again, we believe that for OT to be effective in this new world, because security is so complex, because it's changing so quickly, we need to make it as simple as possible. We need to make it as embedded into the tool as we can. I
couldn't agree more. I think that's really the heart of security, is really making it simple for the users. They're able to do it.
Yep.
And without that, the security solutions won't be effective. So Barry, I'd like to thank you for joining us on State of the Industry, your guide to smart manufacturing, and looking forward to a good show here. Beth, back to you.
Thanks, Barry and Dave. It was so great to get deeper insight in terms of edge computing. It's a huge topic for a lot of folks in industrial operations who aren't sure what kind of data should be really in their facilities, at the edge, or in the cloud. So thanks for bringing more insight. If you're just tuning in, we just completed a third podcast in our State of the Industries, your guide to smart manufacturing. And whether you saw the podcast or you're just tuning in, take a look at this video from Stratus to learn more about edge computing.
We live in a smart world, and it's getting smarter every day. The Internet of Things has entered the world of manufacturing, bringing with it countless new data points and opening the door to greater operational and economic efficiency. Unfortunately, we're collecting data faster than we can analyze it. Why? Because it's difficult to manage computing at the edge, where resources are scarce. That is, until now. Introducing ZTC Edge from Stratus, a zero-touch, virtualized, self-protecting computing platform specifically designed for industrial edge environments. Its compact, rugged design gets computing out of your data center and closer to the data on your factory floor. More power at the edge means more machine uptime, faster decision-making, and more profitability. Enterprise technology retooled for industrial environments is cumbersome and complex and requires continuous attention from your IT staff. With a built-in virtualization platform and availability layer, ZTC Edge is easy to deploy, manage, and service. It can be installed in as little as 30 minutes and can be updated while the system is running. No rebooting means less downtime. ZTC Edge can help keep your shop humming without interruption. ZTC Edge sets a new standard for reliability. Comprised of redundant nodes acting as a single system, ZTC Edge continually evaluates its health and performance. If it detects a potential CPU, memory, or disk failure, ZTC Edge proactively moves workloads from one node to the other, ensuring application and data continuity. And for clients who require an additional layer of assurance, Stratus offers cloud-based system health monitoring and management services. ZTC Edge can be configured to send system logs to Stratus over a secure network. Stratus will analyze and triage alerts to predict failures before they occur, helping ensure your edge applications are always running. Reliable, rugged, efficient, easy to deploy, manage, and service. ZTC Edge from Stratus redefines computing at the edge. Contact our qualified team to request a quote and join the future of edge computing today.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that video from Stratus on edge computing. It's been an awesome day today. We've done 3 live stream podcasts from Automation Fair in the Rock Studios booth. We hope you enjoyed them. And if you happen to have missed any of them, or this has piqued your interest to learning more about our State of the Industry podcast, your guide to the future of smart manufacturing with Dave Vasko, you can actually find them on iTunes. In fact, if you check them out at rok.auto/State of the Industry, you can subscribe to this podcast and keep getting updated on all the new topics that Dave's bringing to the market so that you can stay abreast on what's happening in digital transformation and the industrial Internet of Things. I want to thank each of you for coming and joining us live through this experience, and this isn't it. Although it's done with our live podcast, we've got lots more videos for you to see coming up in the next 2 days. Thanks for having us.